Yep, here we stand. The XC70 is doing the walk of shame this morning. Walk of shame. Up onto the wonderful tow truck from Marv's Towing, Marv's Quality Towing in Boulder came to the rescue, bringing it home. Time to fix it later.
Turn the wheel. A little bit. Straighten it out. You're going to hit the curb. Keep going. Straighten it out. All right, Ava, we need you here.
Your car, Dad! You're driving!
Push! Yay, we did it! It's all downhill now.
Need momentum?
All right, YouTube. That was actually pretty easy to get it taken apart. I didn't even shoot any film because it went so fast. It was nice and easy. We have the cross country. The XC70 is in the shop. You saw it loading up onto a tow truck. It died on us with a P0027 code, which is a exhaust cam solenoid issue. Interestingly, we pushed it into the garage. You'll see that video right here. We pushed it in here. Plugged in the Vita computer, and after it did like some sort of a Microsoft Internet Explorer Edge update on my laptop, it wouldn't work. Finally got it to reboot, connected with the Mongoose cable, and then the battery was dead. So it won't even turn over and start. It started the engine once when we got home, and the battery's dead. So somehow I'm going to figure out how to connect this thing, because I know how to do it on the front jump box, but the battery's in the back, car's in the front. We'll pull the other cart from the back. We'll get it started somehow. Anyway. Yeah, I'm going to show you where we're at. This solenoid's already off. Here's where it's at, YouTube. So it's sitting, these two covers had to come off. The front one, there's a 10mm bolt, kind of hard to get to down in here. You can remove these two, just pop them off, but they don't move that far because of the connected hoses. So I just deal with the tight spacing, get my ratchet in there with a 10mm head, pull off one screw. It's actually this screw. Holds on the outer front timing belt cover. And the top one comes off with just two little T30s, I believe it is. So then you got the timing belt opened up. These are the variable valve timing. This is intake on the front of the engine, obviously, and exhaust on the back. So here's one of the solenoids in place. This is the intake solenoid. So it's not the one throwing the code. This is its connector. So the other one was just sitting here, a mirror image of this one, but turned around. And they are intake and exhaust specific. So the ports underneath them are different. How they function is slightly different because it is stamped exhaust. I'm assuming when you open this one up, underneath it's going to say, actually probably right in here, yeah, intake. It says intake upside down right there. So the other one was just like this, sitting right there, super easy to get to. It was literally pop this connector. Then there were 4 bolts. I think they were 8mm bolts. They weren't even that tight. They were super easy. You can see the 4 here on the intake one, just like it on the back one for the exhaust. All this oil, every time I soak up this oil, more flows in because it's all full of oil and soaking backwards. So, or sloping backwards. So that fills back up. So we're just going to leave it. It is not pasty. It is not gummy, but it did have a nice green gasket in here, and it cracked and broke right away. Everything I read said to replace that gasket when you take it off. So we're going to go get a new one tomorrow at the dealership, and we will turn around and show you what we got over here. Here it is. So here's the cover. It sits in there just like that. So it sits in there on its green gasket with the ram going inside there, and it's got ports to move the oil as the ram goes in and out or pivots. And here it is. So took it apart, sprayed it with a ton of throttle body and air intake cleaner. There is one little tiny, I don't even know what size that is, a little T-nut, and it goes right there that holds this ram in there so it can't pop out. Popped it out, it's just got a little O-ring right here. The O-ring seems fine. Just sprayed it with some throttle body and air intake cleaner because it's pretty much all I got except for the mass airflow cleaner, and it's definitely stronger. Cleaned it with that. I blew it out with the air compressor hose several times. Again, it was not gunky, so most likely this one's bad. But these gaskets are, I don't know, a Volvo gasket's only, what, 10 bucks, something like that? So I think I'll go to the dealership tomorrow, get one, and see if I can reconnect it, and just by spraying it and cleaning it a little bit, if it will reactivate and be good. If not, I'm totally willing to buy a new one of these. Saw it online, it's like 200 bucks on sale. And then obviously would need a third gasket, but for 12 bucks we'll try it this way. We'll see if this thing will work. We'll let it sit overnight so it can just evaporate out, not cause any issues. We'll cover up the oil that's sitting open here where it's supposed to go. But yeah, the P0027 code is specific to this. I wanted to get the Vita connected to see if it had anything else specific. Actually, I did connect it, and it had no codes. It had none. When we did read codes, it didn't have any, so the code had cleared from before with the OBD2 reader, so it wasn't throwing the code. So that wasn't going to help us, and I'm not proficient enough with the laptop, which is actually sitting in the car, the Vita system on here, to know where the repairs were. I was clicking all over engine and intake and exhaust, and I found nothing on camshafts and solenoids. So I got to do a little bit more research on how to get around in the Vita. That's my fault. I just don't know enough about it yet. But YouTube has some videos, and there's the one right there taken apart. He actually had this thing hot wired to see if it would function. I'm not bothering doing that. That's beyond my abilities, and I'm not comfortable doing it, so we'll move on here tomorrow with a new gasket, put it back together, see if it works. If not, I'll order a whole new one. All right, YouTube. Quick change of plans, YouTube. Stopped in at Peterson Volvo in Fort Collins after I dropped my daughter off at Colorado State University this morning to see if they had this gasket, because mine cracked and popped and ripped apart when I pulled it off the block when we removed the exhaust solenoid last night. What I read online on the Volvo bulletin boards was that these get gunky in here, and where there's this ram and this pivot moves and the ram moves in and out, they get gunky and they stopped working, or they just have electrical failures. More commonly, it's electrical failure. When I did pull this one apart last night, it was not goopy. There was no goop. The oil was clean. This car gets regular oil changes. This is most likely the original OEM exhaust cam solenoid. So my assumption is I was going to clean this up. Cleaned it up last night with some solvent. You saw that. Going to put it back together and throw a new gasket on it and see if it would work. But I was kind of thinking it's not going to work because it wasn't gunky or goopy or pasty from bad oil in the first place. So I stopped in there to see if they had the gasket. Sure enough, they did. The pricing was about the same as I could get it online. So I went ahead and asked about the solenoid, and again, the pricing was about the same online. A little bit more expensive, but super convenient. I'm walking away with it. They didn't pre-order it. It was sitting there on hand, and I'm not paying for shipping. So I happened to be there, grabbed them both, thinking just going to replace it with brand new OEM Volvo, and we will move on. And don't have to wait for it to show up in the mail in the event that I put that one back in and it doesn't work. So that's what we're going to do, Volvo. We're going to put this back together and hopefully have a running cross country. Funny note, Haynes manual says that these 4 bolts that hold in the exhaust cam solenoid, 4 bolts, they are 8 millimeters, need to be 10 Newton meters, which is smaller. It's pretty much at the it was 7 foot-pounds, 10 Newton meters, which is the very bottom of the scale on my normal 3/8 inch drive torque wrench. So had to find another option. Had to pull out the old bike racing parts. This is the high-end Spin Doctor torque wrench. Super small torques. I think it only goes up to 24 Newton meters, but 10's dead center in the middle. But it was an 1/8 inch, or what is that? Not 3/8. What is that? I don't know. You tell me. Is that 3? That's not 3/8. That's a 1/4 inch, I think. That's 2/8 socket drive. So yeah, that doesn't work with any of my sockets. Had to go to the Volvo. Ragnar has an emergency toolkit in it with 1/4 inch sockets. So sure enough, there's an 8 millimeter. So we're good to go with the old bike racing. This was for when everything went carbon, with carbon steer tubes and carbon heads, or carbon stems and carbon handlebars, carbon seat posts. Everything got really specific so you wouldn't crack the components with the Newton meters. So these were, I think I got this as a wedding gift, actually, for Barkley's wedding back in the day, for being a groomsman. I think he got all of these fancy torque wrenches. Thanks, Bark. Coming in handy even in the post-bike racing days. That was, my God, that's in the aughts. That's in the late aughts. 4 simple bolts, it's back in place, easy connect. Everything went back together nice and easy. It did have a little silver screen on one of the holes, so where oil's passing back and forth between the little cylinder ram on the solenoid and down inside the head here, camshaft head. So yeah, it's back together. I did pull off this bar. It's so much easier to work around in here and get all these off without the cross brace in. So I am going to start it up. We're just going to see if it'll start. Remember, the battery died. So I did buy one of these bad boys, Duralast, AutoZone's finest. So I charged this up. It's about 93%. We're going to connect this thing together and see if we can get this car to run. Got the little battery jump starter positive terminals here. Remember, the battery's in the trunk on these for the weight distribution, so it's in the back. So yeah, we have the jump terminal here, positive, and then just negative on the engine block there with the black one, and we're at 86%. Should be good. Let's go give this a jump start. All right, YouTube, how many of you guessed it? Put it back in, jump started it, it starts up. No change. It's doing the exact same thing that it did before when it threw the P0027 code, if I remember right, going by memory several days ago. So, yep. Yeah, I'm gonna do a little bit more research, see what we do next. Yeah. Quick update on the cross country, the XC70. Yeah, did not able to get the car to run. The closest we came to it was it ran for maybe 10 seconds after we replaced the exhaust variable or camshaft solenoid on the variable valve timing. In my completely inept, amateurish mechanic abilities, just sitting in the car, listening to it, try to run, it just seems like it's chasing timing. There's no interference going on, so my guess is there's just a wee bit with the belt on here. With two hands, I can get this exhaust variable valve timing hub gear to rock just a wee bit, whereas this one is absolutely solid and just shakes the car on the intake side. But this one just has a little bit of a pivot to it. Shouldn't have any pivot, and it should be solid like this one is. So my guess is at this point, either it skipped one tooth on the exhaust cam or something, just one or two, and didn't cause it to interfere because it still is not making any noises. It's not creating any other codes, just chasing timing is what it seems like, and it's unable to actually come up to idle on the start. Or this thing just completely disintegrated on the inside and it's just completely broken. My guess is when we lock down the cams on the backside and we pull off this belt, that this thing's going to have quite a bit of wiggle in it and it's done. So that's my guess. That's what's going on. But that is beyond my inept and amateurish abilities. I did know that the car needed an oil change. It was about at 3,800 miles, and I typically change it on this car typically around 3,500 to 4,000. So it was right in the range. The oil was not sludgy. There was no buildup underneath this, no crud, no nothing. The oil was fine. Just time to change it. And then when I went under the car, here's what I found. Here's a couple photos.